Hello and welcome to the first video tutorial on xaitMap Creator 2.5. In this first tutorial, I will show you how to use the project wizard to create new projects and give you a better understanding of the workflow and the data flow in xaitMap Creator. So, let's look briefly at the data flow in xaitMap Creator 2.5. An xaitMap Creator 2.5 project consists of three main parts. First of all, there is static geometry. Static geometry is exported from the level editor, and either display geometry or collision geometry can be used for this. xaitMap Creator 2.5 supports Vermal files, Maya files, Trinergy files, and Gamebryo files. Within the Creator software itself, there are three different types of project nodes. First of all, there are character definitions. A character definition describes a non-player character, or NPC, with information such as how high that character can jump, or how far that character can fall without getting hurt. The nav mesh build nodes contain the technical information and parameters on how the navigation mesh should be built. At game compile time, the xaitMap creator will automatically create navigation meshes based on those projects. Those navigation meshes reside in nav mesh files that are stored on disk and shipped with the game. The navigation meshes are considered to be part of the game's resources. At game runtime, they can be loaded to support pathfinding functions within the game. Now that we have an overview of xaitMap, let's switch to the software and take a look at the user interface of xaitMap Creator. Okay, so as you can see, most of the projects are currently disabled. This is the case because we don't have an open project yet. We're going to create a new project by pushing this button here. This brings up a new dialog that gives us different options and templates for creating our new project. Once in the dialog, we can choose between using a wizard, a guided procedure that supports us in creating a new project, or we can start with an empty project and fill in the required fields manually. Let's take the easier approach and we'll use the project wizard. First, we need to choose a location to store the project. I'll leave this on xaitMap and call it tutorial 1. Alright, I confirm this and get the first dialog of the wizard, which asks to add static geometry to our project. I choose Add here and have some predefined example files. We'll choose the Vermal file format and select example2 Vermal file, which is added as static geometry. What we need to do now, along with geometry itself, is specify the up vector, which was modeled using y up in our case. So I confirm this as well. Alright, so the next thing to do is to add the character definitions. I choose Add here in this character dialog, and a new character appears. I'll call him tutorial NPC1 and fill in the required parameters. The first parameter is physical height, which means how low can the ceiling be such that the character can pass beneath it. The second parameter is jump height, which means how high can he jump. And the third one is fall height, which defines how far the character can fall without getting hurt. We'll say our character is roughly 1 meter 80 high, or roughly 5 feet 11 inches. He can jump 1 meter, or roughly 3 feet, and can fall 2 meters, or roughly 6 feet. I confirm this and finish the project. Now that we have the project set up, we can see that the user interface is fully operational and the 3D views are filled in. As you can see, we have a split screen here. In the upper half, we have a top-down view that gives us an overview of the scene. In the lower half, we have a 3D rotational camera that allows us to freely navigate the scene. So let's take a look at the navigational features in xaitMap Creator. You can rotate the camera using the right mouse button. You can move around using the keys A, S, D, and W just as you would in a first-person shooter. We move forward using the W key. To move forward quickly, we can hold the left Shift key. In order to focus any object in the scene, just navigate to the project tree window here in the upper left. Here we can see the example2 geometry we imported. In order to focus it, we just double-click on the icon. As you can see, the view instantly jumps back to a position that gives us an overview of the selected object. Let me briefly talk about one of the most common mistakes in navigation. When we imported our geometry, we specified that it was modeled using the y up vector, so our navigation up vector has to point in the same direction. I will quickly demonstrate what will happen if our navigation up vector points in a different direction. I do this by choosing the tutorial 1 project here in the project tree, which brings up the project settings here on the left. You can see the specification for the up vector here. Currently there is a y up vector specified, and just to demonstrate what can go wrong, I move this to a z up vector. And what happens here in our navigation now is that it is getting increasingly difficult to get any orientation, and the whole scene seems kind of wrong. So if you experience this kind of behavior, it is very likely that you just specified the wrong up vector, and the solution is just to change the project settings and specify an up vector that corresponds to the scene's geometry. Once you've done that, everything will work as expected again. So the next thing to do is actually build a nav mesh. In order to build a nav mesh, I go to the project tree here and open the builds folder. In the builds folder, I have this nav mesh here. You can see that the example vermal file, as well as the character definition, are attached to this build. First thing I do is rename the nav mesh build to my first nav mesh in order to distinguish it from possible later nav mesh builds. So in order to actually build this, you first have to select it in the drop-down menu at the top and then click the Build Nav Mesh button. Depending on the complexity of the scene, this might take a while. As our current example scene is pretty easy, it's ready after a couple of seconds. And now I just confirm this. What we can see now in the 3D view is that the nav mesh areas are indicated as green polygons. If we zoom in using the mouse wheel, we can see that not only the nav mesh areas are indicated, but also the midpoints of each nav mesh polygon. The midpoints are shown as blue boxes, and the connections between the different nav mesh polygons are shown as white lines. Okay, so let me briefly sum up what we've learned in this first xaitMap tutorial. We used the project wizard to create a project in xaitMap Creator 2.5. We imported the static geometry from a level editor and edited the character definition. We learned the basics of navigation inside the xaitMap Creator, and we built our first nav mesh. Thanks for listening.